A mercenary named Jim Powell, who is detained at sub-Saharan Africa's Playa Negra prison, appears in the opening scene. He is freed from prison one day because a company wants to recruit him to do a job. He is going to an old Soviet lab that is currently guarded by a militia with a scientist named Dr. Lila Healy. It turns out that Dr. Irvine, a scientist, has been doing covert research there in the fortress's subterranean bunker. Given the advanced state of that research, Jim's task is to break into the lab and seize all of the important materials before Dr. Irvine vanishes. Jim's former squad, which consists of engineers Harris and Williams and soldiers Steinman, Mason, and Corey, is assigned to this mission. Jim is not thrilled to hear that Spencer, a corporate security guard, would be going along, but because Dr. Lila is running the show, he is powerless to say no. After that, the mercenaries started walking through a forest in order to fulfill their task. Jim warns the others on the team to exercise additional caution, since he thinks there may be landmines all along the pathway. They hear the sound of a motorcycle as they travel. Jim gives the command for everyone to move aside and seek shelter in the minefield as he recognizes the impending threat. A perimeter patrol officer arrives a short while later, surveys the area, and then heads off. When the mercenary gang finally reaches the lab building after some traveling, they find that the militia has taken several citizens into custody. The militia leader Steinman claims that El Dictator lights the captives on fire and covers them in oil for his own amusement. Williams and Harris try to sneak inside the camp, and the other members of the team stand by like snipers. The camp guards stop Harris and Williams as they approach the gate. Williams then addresses them in Russian while posing as a technician, but the guards don't appear to find his Russian accent convincing, so Harris decides to take matters into his own hands. Then, feigning inebriation, he launches into an anti-Russian tirade in Georgian. The camp commander coolly reacts and lets the two of them in, while the other mercenaries become agitated. After entering the base and taking over the security system, Williams and Harris use a remote to lead the other members of the squad to the underground bunker. The group discovers a room where a half-naked woman is taped to the ceiling and has tape covering her lips as they sneak into the stronghold. Now that they can't determine whether to save her or leave her behind, the squad is in a difficult situation. Jim claims that the militia will discover the incursion, regardless of what they do. They are debating when they hear footsteps approaching, so they quickly switch out the lights in the room and prepare to launch an attack. The crew snatches the guard as soon as he walks in and starts strangling him. The guard fires in a last-ditch attempt to defend himself, but the mercenaries are able to murder him. When they switch on the lights after that, they find that the captured woman has been fatally shot by one of the gunshots. The gang is now concerned that the guards would figure out who was behind the infiltration. Soon after, Spencer has an idea to avoid being suspected. He stages the scene to look like a sexual assault by taking off the deceased guard's pants and untying the captured woman. The mercenary party descends the stairs to the basement lab following this incident. In the meantime, the same patrol officer from earlier approaches Williams and Harris in the control room. Williams pretends that they are fixing the monitor cords when she asks what they are doing. Though she is wary of the technician's abrupt presence, she hasn't confronted them yet. However, the remaining mercenary party, armed with pistols and torchlights, makes their way deeper into the underground bunker. Steinman has a feeling that they are being followed at one point, but she sees no immediate danger. But while keeping an eye on their allies, Williams and Harris spot someone on the security feed. They try to notify the group about the same, but the weak radio transmissions underground prevent them from getting in touch with them. Harris goes to the underground bunker to personally notify the group after considering other options. A little while later, Corey, bringing up the rear, is ambushed by a stealthy assailant who stabs him with a needle before vanishing into the night. Corey starts fire in a panic, but nobody is in the area. His gunfire alerts the gang, and they return to Corey, who informs them of another person's presence. He withholds the fact that the syringe wounded him. Nevertheless, Jim tells them to ignore the assailant and proceed with caution, as they don't have enough time to look into it. Shortly after, Corey begins to feel quite uncomfortable because of the dangerous substances in the syringe. He quickly gets a fever and boils all over his body, which causes him to finally fall behind and be unnoticed by the others. The party is ambushed by some masked attackers as they make their way through a network of dimly lit tunnels. The attackers attempt to stab them with syringes, exactly like they did to Corey. Harris arrives during the altercation and begins shooting the attackers one by one. Unfortunately, before the other mercenaries neutralize the threat, he is shot in the stomach by the last attacker. When they eventually make it to the lab, they are met with a macabre sight: a number of corpses laying on the ground. They also find a trap, which is a laser transmitter designed to notify guards in the event of a breach. Following some thorough examination of the region, they administer to Harris's wound and let him rest on the bed, while the other members of the gang go in pursuit of Dr. Irvine. They soon discover Irvine conducting experiments on a small child in a more hidden section of the lab. Unexpectedly, Lila is introduced to Dr. Irvine, who reveals that she was once her assistant. Jim is shocked to learn that the girl is one of the specimens known as Ali when he inquires about her identity. At this point, it becomes clear that Lila's main goal in going on this expedition is to remove Ali and Gerda as specimens. After learning of these facts, Jim becomes enraged and confronts Lila about the dearth of information she gave him. He demands that Harris and Corey leave immediately and holds her responsible for what happened to them. Lila, however, is adamant that specimen Ali cannot be moved while pregnant, because doing so could be lethal. Jim then makes a threat against Dr. Irvine, demanding an explanation of everything that is occurring in the lab. In reaction, the physician starts to divulge every secret that the Soviet scientists had hitherto kept. She begins by displaying a meteorite to them that she says is 2.4 billion years old and has been buried in permafrost for 70 million years. According to her, the rock includes a variety of organic things, including genetics, DNA, and cells. Dr. Irvine was contacted by the Soviet scientists when they discovered it and realized they needed international specialists to retrieve its contents. Then, they enticed her with claims of totally unrestricted research. Without regard to morality or the law, she combined the contents of the meteorite with human DNA to produce two hybrid monsters. In addition, Dr. Irvine takes them to a unique establishment where she has housed Gerda, a male hybrid with repulsive eyes. The doctor claims that while these hybrids are just 5 years old, she has bred them, and they have already attained sexual maturity. The pregnant female will give birth to a second-generation subject, more alien than Gerda or Ali. Ali feels labor pains, which abruptly ends their talk. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Dr. Irvine gets ready to deliver the baby. She tries using anesthesia and medications to relieve Ali's discomfort, but none work on the hybrid. The doctor makes several unsuccessful attempts before determining that Ali won't last very long and taking steps to secure the child. Steinman finds Irvine's indifference to the girl's pain to be deeply unsettling. She shoots Ali because she can't stand to see her suffer needlessly and spares her from that agonizing end. Dr. Irvine claims that after seeing this, Steinman is to blame for the loss of priceless goods, but the latter still feels so strongly that she lashes out at the doctor. Jim removes Steinman from the scene before things get out of hand, advising her to get some alone time to decompress. Following this, Lila gives Jim the command to kill Dr. Irvine, because both she and her work are now worthless. Jim vehemently disputes, saying he is not an assassin. Then he gives Mason the order to get ready to go, but Mason turns on him instead. Here, it becomes clear that Lila has already made an offer to Harris and Mason, offering them a fortune following the mission. Steinman, on the other hand, visits Gerda in his room to let him know that his partner has passed away. She learns too late, though, that the hybrid is hostile and has a weapon hidden. She is attacked abruptly by him, and she breaks several limbs when he throws her to the ground. Then, he enters the operating room and goes out, stopping the mercenaries' fracas. In a shocking change of events, he blows Irvine's head off with his cutting-edge weapon and leaves the area. Following this incident, Jim and Mason get along again, since they are no longer at odds over whether or not to kill Irvine. Steinman is later discovered to be in a wrecked state when they start looking for her. Lila chooses to take care of Steinman, while Jim, Mason, and Spencer set out to find Gerda as part of a shared goal to destroy the threat. Shortly after their departure, Lila exposes her malevolent aim by giving Steinman a lethal medication. She then proceeds to kill Harris in the hospital after this. He shows her an unpinned grenade in his palm, but it explodes before she can respond as she's preparing the same lethal medicine. When the three hears the explosion, Mason takes the decision to look into the situation. The image that greets him upon his return to the medical institution is gloomy. Lila and Harris's motionless bodies. He runs to her out of concern for Steinman and discovers that she is also deceased. Mason subsequently returns to the other members of his gang and informs them of these awful occurrences. After learning of this, Spencer advises that because the mission has been a total failure, they should just depart as a group, without considering any further goals. Spencer then takes them to an elevator, claiming it to be Lila's hidden escape route. Spencer gets angry and expresses his dissatisfaction at not being paid as they ascend. Soon later, as the three prepare to leave the elevator, a mutant Corey ambushes them and murders Spencer right away. Then he attacks Mason, but Jim kills him with a gunshot. Following this, Jim and Mason emerge from the tunnels and arrive at the fortress gate to discover Gerda and the militia guards fighting back and forth. At some point, the two mercenaries rejoin with Williams, who looks to have been severely beaten by the militia. The three then hide out on a corner as Gerda, who is on a murderous rampage, kills each member of the militia one by one. Mason offers to give up his life in a last-ditch attempt to stop the threat, allowing Jim to focus his gun on Gerda. Lila, who has been discovered to have survived the explosion, approaches Jim from behind as he moves forward and shoots him before he can get a shot at Gerda. Williams immediately retaliates, grabbing a shotgun and firing back, instantly killing her. By now, though, the hybrid uses a machete to sever Mason in two. Jim approaches the hybrid and points the gun at him in spite of his wound. Gerda instructs him to pull the gun as he approaches, but he pauses. The hybrid flees the scene by scaling a wall as a result. In the epilogue, Gerda may be seen blending in with the town's populace and passing for a regular person.